Hi, welcome back to Danger and Dice. I'm PJ.
Ta-da! I'm Shanna. And with us this week during our mini-series are Laura and Ray, our relations.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for having us, guys.
And a special guest.
Oh yes, I forgot. Lola,
If you
the
hear,
dog.
if you hear,
Heavy
There it is.
breathing.
yes.
I think she's going to add something to the story because, we're going to get nervous with your scary stories. And so
She's already
Have
there.
a little bit of
She's doing
theater
it for
to
us.
the
she's feeling it.
You
to the
know,
podcast.
Pug's breathing. What
Too
better
bad her
sound
face
is there?
ruins it. Like, at least the podcast, you can't see the dopey, dumb dog look that we're getting. What? My name. This is just how I breathe, Mom. But our mini-series is called...
The Well House Exorcism. So you'll hear about our story later. Right now, Laura and Ray are going to tell theirs because they also had crazy stuff happening in the house, in their house.
Yes,
And they have a spring, too.
we do in our basement. Yes, it kind of sprang up from nowhere
Ba-doom-ching.
years
Oh,
ago.
wait, I got
and
that.
yes. And yeah. So, yeah, when we moved into our house, Ray and I were commuting together to work, and we had an hour commute, so it was a
remember
bit of a
that.
distance. And we came home together, opened the door, to our locked home, and, I mean, our dad's English, we drink a lot of tea. First thing I do
We
is...
have tea right now.
We are. First thing I do is go to put on a pot of tea after work. And I go to pick up the pot, and it's hot. And I'm very confused by this. So I open up the lid, and I look in, and there's tea. There's no tea bags. They've already been removed, but there's freshly brewed, steaming hot tea. The stove is ice cold, and I remember I just called Ray over, and I'm like, "Do you see this?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm
That's
like,
pretty much what I said.
"Yeah."
I see it. I
And
don't
I'm
know
like,
why it's here.
"Do you think that Mom and Dad broke into our house and made us tea?" And you're like, "No."
I was thinking that would have had to be a heck of a hoax on your parents'
Right?
side.
Which they've, never said they did. I mean, when we told them about this, they were very shocked and surprised by this story. But that was the very first weird thing that happened.
Now, this was like 12 years ago.
At least.
More than.
yeah,
More than
than-
because we've been in our house almost 16
Yeah,
years. I
but that
wanna
was
say.
Oh,
only
okay.
a week after we had moved in.
Yeah,
So I thought of
We
it
were
as
in college.
I'm asking because, I don't know if you remember or, it was a weird thing to come home to. Did you find tea bags anywhere?
Yeah.
Gosh,
Did
I didn't
Did you
even
look?
look. I didn't.
I wouldn't have thought to look
No.
either,
We didn't
but
look
I just
either.
had to ask.
No, I didn't look. But the thing that really weirds our sister out the most is that Ray and I drank the tea.
See, I would not do that. I'd be good.
She's like, "You drank ghost tea?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't want to be
Smelled
rude."
like almonds, so we were fine.
Yeah, I poured a third glass and I left it on the counter for whoever and whatever made it for us. So I thought it was, I was like, "Hey, they can do this every day," but they did not. That was the one and only time for that.
So can we talk about your basement just for a second? Because that's the connection, really, for our mini-series of our exorcism and then your house. My first vision of your basement was, I honestly thought that you were, a serial killer, and you were leading me into the depths of, what was going to be my dungeon. And I was prepared for the lotion line, put the lotion, I was afraid. So... explain your basement before you did work, because I think our listeners have to hear that.
I don't know that it's so different now. I hate to tell you. Ray, how would you describe the basement?
Scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's a door, and we didn't write this.
Yes, this is what I
On
want
the
to hear.
door, but it says "keep out"
Keep door closed.
or "keep door closed."
Keep
Oh, I
door
thought it
closed.
said yeah.
Yeah.
That's how long I've been
no.
That's how much time has.
Yeah, no, we
Passed
have
since I've been in the
literally
basement.
paid to move the washer and dryer upstairs. So unless the breaker goes for whatever reason, there's no reason for us to go in the basement, which I'm okay with.
Can I paint my story?
Yes.
Now, at the time, I don't think I was even engaged to Pete. I think we were still dating.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And you still
And
married
you
him.
and yeah, well, 'cause that house, I'm not living there. So we go downstairs to the basement because I think we were going to be doing laundry because at the time you had
Yes.
the washer and dryer
Yep.
down there, and so we walk down the steps to the basement, and then there's like a little like area, and then there's another door to the basement proper.
Yes.
Which is common to old houses, like for like the well and like really for like storing food, like the cabinetry and all that kind of stuff. So I see the door and it says "keep door closed." It's like painted like what, like in red
In
or
red,
something.
And
yeah,
some letters are capitalized and some are lowercase.
yeah, it is
Super
something you would
creepy.
see in
And
like
it would
a
drive
horror movie.
somebody
Oh,
who
yeah.
has OCD absolutely crazy
that
because
is
there's
true.
no rhyme or reason to that.
I was more afraid like, is this painted with blood? Like I was concerned.
Well, and I feel like I should add in here too that the floor is a dirt floor. The walls have this crumbly plaster.
We're not even there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So when we get into the basement proper, then so we open up the door. It says "keep door closed" because we obviously listen so well. You go in there and something was sprayed. I think to kill the spiders.
no,
or
I've
something.
learned more about this.
Okay, so when I walk in, the room is like this creepy white color, and there are dead spiders hanging from the ceiling, and it's again dirt floor, white and dead spiders hanging, and you have like stalls in the basement.
Yes.
Which looks like they would have kept like their dogs down there because this is an 1800s house, so probably the hunting dogs or something. I don't know, but there are stalls
Yes.
and there are rings and things in the wall. So I
Yes.
see that, and then you're like, oh yeah, the wash and dryer is down at the other end. So I gotta walk past
Far
every
end.
single stall, every ring and thing in the wall, and I'm like, are we going to attach me to the wall? Like I was concerned.
Well, at the very least, the basement had always been and still continues to be illuminated. There's plenty of light.
There's plenty of light, and it it shines
Some of
off
it.
of the white. The
Yeah.
whole, so what's the white stuff?
Well, I was very concerned because these spiders. There's just thick webbing everywhere, and then there are these spiders that look like they've been coated in dust for centuries. Is how I would describe it. And so, what concerned me the most is that some of the spiders were moving.
What?
Yes, I'm 100% serious. And I have looked it up, and there's apparently a type of fungus that slowly kills insects, and so they're basically zombie spiders, basically. It's just they're covered in fungus.
They're no longer there, though.
Yes, oh, that's good. But
Mhm.
so that was my first time at in your basement. I think in your house.
Yeah, it's not really on the regular tour.
No, it's not. So that's the connection. So I want to have that creepy ambiance to the background with the tea story.
Well, and also let's not forget that you two lived there.
We did.
Just before living here.
We'll tell our stories, but we wanted to have you guys tell yours
Indeed.
first. So, but I think that basement story is important because of like stories you had later of like the late night sounds, and I don't want to give anything away, but like the kitchen and
Yes,
yeah.
we have a lot.
So I think that knowing that the basement had that like writing on there is important, and the dead zombie spiders, which I think just adds a whole other caveat to this. So
And,
thank you.
And I'll add too that the keep door closed door was always open from the day that we had moved in. So we did not open it.
That's
It
why you have tea.
Yes.
We didn't open it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Although I think that's more like, that's not so much supernatural. It's just an idea of how gross the basement really was. It wasn't like, it wasn't something supernatural or
Listen, there's a
ghoulish
fungus
go
in
in
there.
about it.
Let,
It's
let
just
the
that
spiders die. They're
it's
doing
just
fine.
that maybe we're just
Spectacular.
not very good homeowners.
The previous homeowners.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so we had the tea story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's continue. So, what's the next thing you remember? Because we're not really going in an order here.
Well, and it was a couple of years after we moved into the house, but certainly my most memorable. And I feel like I need to backtrack a little bit because I tend to be very, not pessimistic, but like cynical about like the supernatural. At the very least, for the longest time, I had been. I didn't really, buy it. So I was like,
I feel the same way until I lived in this
Yeah.
house. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I'm not really sure, or I'm sure that was just the wind or something like that.
Coincidence.
Hmm. And nothing besides the tea. Well, okay, so maybe there are a few things, and I just kind of wrote it from my mind.
There are a lot of things you can explain away.
Yep.
You know.
Exactly. This one was not one of them. And I remember because Laura went away for a conference and it was just me in the house alone for the first time. And our bedroom was downstairs, what's right now our TV room. And I remember being in bed and I remember something next to me, like a being next to me, like a person next to me. And I think it's Laura, or I think to myself, oh, it's just Laura. And then I snap to and I realize it can't be Laura. She's away at a conference. So then I look over and it's this figure, dark hair, long dark hair, white nightgown. I remember so much of this. And these eyes that are just dark, like even though it was night, I just knew it was all dark eyes. I could see no white, to them. And I hold her gaze for what felt like 2 minutes, which actually felt like an eternity if you think about it. And then I snap out of it. I go over and turn on the light on my nightstand, look right back, and there is nothing there. It's like something out of like what you would see in like a scary movie. And then, so suffice to say, I did not sleep well that night.
Didn't you try to put Tinkerbell on the bed with you?
That was the morning after.
Oh, okay.
That was the morning after. And into the evening, because again I was still working, and I bring her up to the bed, and this is usually a no-no. She was always trying to get on the bed.
So wait, you said the morning after. Do you mean the next night? Or was it later that morning?
No, well, it was the morning after, and she didn't. I remember this because the morning after I tried getting her back on the bed. Didn't do anything.
Oh, and for clarification, Tinkerbell is a very large black pit bull Labrador mix.
Yes.
Obviously
And
named
usually she's a
Tinkerbell.
type
Yeah, the name fit her, though.
Of course it
Yes.
did.
No, I remember this was in the morning. I tried. I didn't really pay a lot of attention because I was running late for work, quite honestly, anyways. And then later that night, I tried again a couple of times.
Because you didn't want to sleep alone.
Because I didn't want to sleep alone. And normally she's aching to get onto the bed, right? Or she had been. Bring her back up, and she looks at that spot, and then she just runs off, okay? And then I bring her back again, and she's just staring at where I saw this figure, and then she peed, like, on the bed. It was like the girl in The Exorcist. She just looked that way and just peed, and then bolted.
And she never did
And
things
she
like
never
that,
did that.
ever.
She was a good girl.
She was
I
a
thought
good
this was
girl.
all in one night. I didn't realize it
Yeah, I thought it
spanned
was one
like a 24-hour-ish period.
No, this was a 24-hour-ish period. It happened, the incident of course happened at night. Woke up the following morning, although to be honest I did not sleep very well. And then tried to get Tinkerbell on the bed, wouldn't do it. I was running late, try again in the evening, that evening, twice, and that's when, she peed on the bed.
And didn't you then go up to the farm, like to spend the night with
No,
my
that was
parents?
another incident.
That was, okay.
Yeah.
What was the other incident?
The other incident was when we had two lights, right? So like lamps on two nightstands, and then at night again you were away at a conference and they just started flashing. It was like something out of Stranger Things, and it was a strange thing, and they just started flashing. And then I was like, there is something in this house, and I don't know what it is. And it's never happened before or since. Now, funnily enough, like when you were at your last conference, nothing happened, of course.
Yeah. No, but okay, I just need to add like a little funny thing, though, to that story, because I remember when that happened. So I was in Chicago, so there was a time difference. So I was like asleep, and here, in the middle of the night, he had called me, and so I get this voicemail the next day, and it's Ray saying, Laura, something's here. Something's in the house. I gotta go. And I'm just hearing this voicemail, and I'm like, oh my God, it's dead? What happened? And that was the night that you abandoned the house and you went up to spend the night with my parents, which I don't blame you.
Nope.
Yeah.
Hey, we have done that ourselves. We
Mhm.
went to a chapter out of the old Ray book, and we did that ourselves at this
Yeah.
house. So
I don't know why I didn't do it the first time, to be
Yeah.
honest. That was kind of creepy. That was
Yeah.
very creepy.
we
Yeah.
tend to lie to ourselves and it's like, it's fine. It's just, I was half asleep and I thought I saw somebody, but she wasn't actually there. We kind of like try to make it go away that way.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta be a man by staying alone.
I think when the dog reacted poorly is when I kind of knew.
Because that confirms that it wasn't a dream,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, that I knew something was up.
Yeah.
But,
well, we
So-
need some other stories, though.
So we had really a wide variety of things happen. One of the most common things was a mimic.
Yes.
And we all had heard this,
Mhm.
and we would all hear each other's voices coming from different parts of the house, calling names, saying things, whatever. So yeah, I would hear Ray or PJ or Shanna like coming from the attic when they were in class or whatever, And so I remember the very first time it happened. Ray was at choir practice, and I could hear him calling my name from outside. And I was doing the dishes, so I was drying my hands, and I literally went out the side door to greet him because I was so sure he was there. And I was saying to him, like, what are you doing home so early? And I'm looking around, and there's no one there. And then, an hour or so later, he comes home, and he had been at choir practice that whole time.
Had you ever heard the mimic in the house, Ray?
no, but the mimic has done its impression of me a couple of
Oh,
times.
yeah.
Do you remember one time when you turned out the light?
Yes. So in the foyer, there is a light that also turns off the upstairs light. And so I noticed it was on, and so I flicked it off, and I heard Ray say, "Hey, I'm up here." And so I flip it back on, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were downstairs." And then I go into our dining room, and that leads into our living room, which leads into our den, and there's Ray at the computer. And I'm like, "You weren't by any chance upstairs and you magically transported yourself, right?" So-
I was like, what are you talking about?
Although I think one of the more interesting times that the mimic happened was when we had a contractor doing work. Actually, they were giving an estimate. They're going through the house,
Mhm.
and
And they're like, this is another
Now, this time
$10,000.
around, yeah.
So.
No, this time around, like, I don't recall the presence or the mimic mimic anybody in particular.
it didn't mimic us. But the contractor, what you hear is you hear thump, 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 and kids laughing upstairs in our
From the
attic.
attic.
And the contractor looks at us and says, "Do you have kids up
No,
there?"
we all heard it.
Oh
We
yeah, all three of us were there.
heard
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm. And
Oh, my.
yeah.
Then there were children laughing. And then he's like, yeah, right, are there children up there? And then I remember, I'm like, no, Neil, there are no children up there. But you can go ahead and check.
Be our
Go ahead.
guest.
Be our
Go
guest.
right up.
Go
We don't
upstairs.
have any flowers in the attic.
Yeah,
And
go
he
upstairs.
did
take-
not go up, for the record.
Yes. I was like, go upstairs, take a look around, open up the doors. I guarantee you will find no children.
Was this Neil unavailable for contracting work
Actually,
then?
no, he did do the work for us.
You're like, oh, look at my wrist, gotta go.
I know, he was very good.
Yeah.
But we also would have.
Well, we have our own mimic stories,
Oh, go right ahead.
which is fun. Just a side note, we were at the time. PJ had moved in to one of your bedrooms upstairs because he was in college, and I was just over. We're watching something on his TV. I don't remember, but it was like afternoon. We were just hanging out, and the door was closed. And on the other side of the door, we heard our friend Dan talking. And after PJ and I go, "What the heck?" And we both said, "Dan, what are you doing here?"
You're like, are you gonna call before you show up here?
And
You
he's
know?
like, "Hey guys, come on, let me in." And we're like, "The door's open." Open the door, there's no Dan. And I'm just like, "Oh, okay, so that was a mimic." And I had heard your voice throughout the house, and like that's when I was alone during my spring break during student teaching, the Berwick had off or whatever. So I knew that there was a mimic in the house, and I'd already heard the stories about Ray's voice when you were doing the dishes. But he had his own issue where he got mad at me,
Well, not mad, but I was like,
annoyed.
I was downstairs and I heard her voice from up in the bedrooms, just saying like, "Hey, can you bring up my chapstick?" And at that point, she had like 5 different flavors of chapstick. So I
Stress
yell,
one does.
I'm like, I yell up, "Which one?" No answer. So I'm like, fine, I'll just bring them all up. And I walk in the room, I'm like, "Which flavor do you want?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "The flavor of chapstick you asked me to bring." And she's like, "I didn't say anything." Oh, right.
We weren't even a phase. We're like, okay, whatever, sure. Because you had a story before that too, like where we knew that things were happening in the house. Because you had a story where you actually got so scared you had a baseball bat. I think you took it downstairs.
Oh.
Yes.
So we knew going in
Yes.
to this house and visiting.
We had heard
me,
stories.
We
Yes.
knew that it would be fun.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
yeah.
As Ray said, like, I know that I didn't believe in it, but I didn't until the night that we had Kyle over. That, like,
Yes.
that was
Solidified
scary.
that something was
the
funky
mimic was,
about
like,
it.
cutesy. Like, we obviously both heard Dan, so, like, you know, okay, whatever, it's a mimic. But anyway, tell your baseball bat story.
So, it's not so different from the story that you actually partied to the first night that you know, like Jen and Kyle were over and all of the doors flew open and there was all this, you know, just crazy stuff happening and we're outside
That was
trying
a
to get
wild
the indoor
night.
cats back in, and I think that was the night you took pictures of all those orbs.
Yes. No, that was a different night.
Was that a different night?
That was
Forgot
later.
all
I
about
have
that.
those photos still.
Do you?
I do.
I want to see them.
There is so there.
Yeah.
Now that I think about
I
it,
mean, there's literally hundreds, thousands maybe of orbs.
There are
like
a
they look like
bunch of
snowflakes.
stories.
It's crazy.
You guys
oh,
you
yeah.
have a lot of stories.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. This is just the.
But anyway, baseball
beginning.
bat.
So yeah, so at the time our dog was a puppy, and he was doing. You know how dogs have different barks for different things. You know, he was doing his "someone's at the door" bark. You know, that real high pitched alert bark, and so I mean it was like midnight, and. And so I'm like, okay, this is either the cops because there's some kind of a problem, or mom and dad because there's an emergency, like something bad is happening. So that's when I grabbed the baseball bat. Of course, Ray is like oblivious. And I don't know why I didn't make you come down with me
That's
because I was
Shanna.
100% sure.
I'll take care of it.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
No, I'll be
oblivious.
sleeping.
Sleeping.
Oh,
Yeah.
sleeping, yeah. No, I was 100% sure I was going to meet somebody because I thought it was either a cop, my parents with an emergency, or an intruder. So I grabbed this baseball bat and I'm turning on the lights as I'm creeping down the stairs and going through the foyer into the dining room and into the kitchen where the dog is. And again, kind of a tie back to the basement, there's sort of a corner area where there's a basement door and then there's, was it perpendicular to it? No.
Oh,
Yeah.
And the corner.
At
of
a
it.
right angle,
At a right
like
angle.
sharing a corner.
Yes, is this outside door that leads to this wooded area on the side of our house. So the dog's in the corner. I can't tell if he's barking at the basement or at the door. And so he's all worked up. Meanwhile, I mentioned our cats. We have several. They are all in the kitchen and they are all poofed up. And one of them is on top of the refrigerator. And they are all of the animals are completely worked up, and every single cabinet and fridge and freezer door in the kitchen are wide open.
It was like-
that story I told my students, and I'm like, and the basement said keep door closed. So what did you learn? You listen to the red letters that you see.
I mean, maybe I should just go down and close it.
Lock it.
I remember for a while you tried to make us believe it. No, it's fine. The cabinets aren't opening. It's gravity. Like the kitchen floor is a little sideways, and so the refrigerator door is just opening because of gravity. I'm like,
The things
no.
people say to like
to make it to
convince
explain
themselves.
It is true. Yeah. I mean, I think it was the day, though, PJ, when you and I were standing in the kitchen, and, like, literally, we're, like, 3 feet apart,
Yeah.
you know?
We were literally on opposite sides of a stove.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It was
Less than 3
right?
feet.
It was
That's
the
it.
stove.
It was the hutch. It was that green
Oh, okay.
hutch that I had.
Okay.
And
Oh, I
so
like that.
on the hutch, I mean, again, another little tie back to tea, I had these jars of flavored tea. And I had 4 of them, and I remember one of them from the center, just out of nowhere, just fume. Like,
It literally hopped a foot and a half
Yeah.
forward off of the hutch, bounced on like the top of the hutch, like the countertop,
Yes.
and then onto the floor.
yeah, it just kind of hopped off. And I mean, nothing else was disturbed. It wasn't like we were jumping around or causing a ruckus. There was no big truck that was knocking
we were
it off.
standing.
We were standing there talking, and all of a sudden, this one jar from the center just fume right off.
But my favorite was our reaction to it, which is, did that just hop off there? Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
And then,
You just pick it up and you put it back.
But it's validating.
There was a time too, Shanna, that I remember. I forget if it was in the den or the dining room, but remember the speakers?
The radio.
The radio.
Yes. I tell this story to my students
Yes,
too.
please go right ahead.
Well, that must have been, I was student teaching. So, like,
Yeah.
because that's when I was like, maybe we should move out. Like, I was kind of done. Because then you did research on the house and I was just creeped out. So, I had made a cake, right? And we were going to eat cake and whatever. But I heard, like, a staticky sound. And then there was a radio playing, and it wasn't like music. There was like an introduction like sound,
Yeah.
and then it was a baking show. Like I could hear someone saying, you know, don't forget to pull out your whatever.
But
so you
very
can-
staticky.
Yeah, very staticky.
Yeah.
And so I was walking around trying to figure out where the heck it was coming from, and I'm like, I'm not gonna make this freaking roast. I don't care. Shut up, whoever you are, Paula Dean. But like, I was freaking out about it, and so I went and I found you. I'm like, Laura, do you have a radio playing? And you usually went through all the speakers, whatever. And then I was home alone like the next day, and it happened again at the exact same time. And I realized there was like this like recording, or what is it called when you're like, when there's a ghost, but they kind of, that loop kind of idea.
Residual
So, that
haunts is
residual
what they
haunt,
call
yeah.
it.
So like someone must have like in the 50s or whatever tuned into this radio station daily to get ideas for cooking, because they used to have that back on the radio, you know, back in the day.
So it was like an old, because I wasn't
It
around
was
for this. It was
yeah,
like
it was
old time.
definitely old timey.
Yeah,
Because
I
another
heard that too,
another
yeah.
time we heard it was like 50s big band era music, right?
Well, and I mean, maybe you weren't there for that. Maybe I was alone, but I did find the speakers that were making the sounds.
Oh, did you?
Oh,
They weren't plugged into anything.
Oh, good.
And this is
Of
pre
course,
Bluetooth.
of course.
This
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
this is back in the early 2000s. This was pre Bluetooth.
Do you
And for a
remember? Do you still
while,
have them?
you said, well, your windows were open. It might be Chelsea next door practicing. I'm like, listen, Chelsea is not in charge of a radio food show from the 50s, sweetie. Try again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it was when it was playing some kind of like a big band music.
Yeah.
What were the old? I'm just curious. Were the old speakers?
No,
or
they were our modern speakers. Because they
What?
were the type that plugged into a computer. So that's how I know they weren't plugged into
Oh.
anything. Like they needed the USB or whatever, to.
But that's into your telephone stories then, too.
Oh yes.
Those are crazy stories.
I always
I
feel bad
remember-
for you, right, with those.
I felt bad for me too. I felt bad for me too when the house decided to call 911
Yeah.
and the cops showed up.
Well, I think we have to preface it also by saying that for weeks leading up to it, we have to go back even further. We had disconnected our landline because at that point in time,
We
cell
had-
towers were a thing. We were using our cell phone, so no need for a landline anymore. And so we disconnected it, and for weeks, our disconnected landline kept calling my parents. It kept showing up on their caller ID. And they kept, answering it, and they said...
When they would call us back.
And then they would call us back, but on the cell phone, being like, "Did you just call?" And we're like, "No." And so I shouldn't have been surprised when one day I got a knock on the door. And mind you, I've spent the day cleaning, so I'm a mess. I'm like in my grungy clothes. Like this is the most inopportune moment for this to happen. But I get a
Always.
knock on my door, and there's a uniformed police officer standing there. And I'm like, oh God, now what? And so I opened the door, "Hello, officer," and he said, "Ma'am, are you in trouble?" And I'm like, "No." And he said, "Well, we've had a 911 call here, and it was just a woman. It was a woman crying." And I said, "I think you must have the wrong address." It certainly
I cry
wasn't.
over housework, too, but...
It wasn't me.
Have you seen the size of this place?
So I'm trying to tell him that it wasn't me. And then, again, I was like, well, maybe you do have the wrong house. What number was it? And he told me the number, which was our disconnected landline. And I explained to him that the landline had been disconnected. I said, maybe somebody else has that number. And he looked so confused. And I'm just like, everything's correct, except I'm not in any trouble. And it was okay. We took a quick look around, and everything was fine. And I think you were home for this, right? You came downstairs.
Yes. Yeah, I was home for this.
And he, was,
I
he's
remember.
giving
Oh,
Ray
you
the side
remember.
I
eye.
remember the looks of judgment that I got when he arrived, and I was like, I know exactly what he's thinking.
Were you there the second time that it
Yep.
happened? Oh, okay.
How do you
How do you forget? Like that's what I remember is
Although
Ray.
there are things that I
Yeah.
forget about, like the speaker story.
Yeah. So
Your
yeah.
Ray was worried
They all
that he's
kind of
gonna
blend
put
together
handcuffs
after a
the
while.
Yeah,
second
they
time.
do.
Does, yeah.
They do.
But the second story is important because poor Ray was expecting handcuffs at that point.
So
The second story.
yeah.
It was just a variation of the first.
That is
except
true.
You just, more looks. of
Yeah.
Didn't they
suspicion.
take you like aside and talk
took
to both?
her
Took
aside.
me
That's right.
aside to like, are you really okay, kind of a thing. And it's like, yes, like you have the wrong number. It's not me. So yeah, our whatever it was, this disconnected landline kept calling people.
And crying.
And
A female
crying.
crying.
Yes.
It's important.
Yeah.
Now, when do you remember when it would call mom and dad?
It was like hang-ups for them. Like they would hear like a second or two of like silence and then
somebody
it would hang up.
Mm.
So I don't know if it was just like test runs. I don't know what was happening. Sorry, Lola's breathing.
She's being nervous
She
now.
is.
Adding to the
There was
suspense.
another interesting thing that happened, and usually I really didn't like to interact with it because that only encourages it.
Yes.
So, but I was in the shower, and I hear very slowly and very deliberately 3 knocks. Just
That sounds really good, by the way.
Yes.
does. And I ignore it, and then I hear it again. And I ignore it, and one more time. And then I'm like, fine, I know you're there. I'm in the shower. Leave me alone. And it knocks again. And then the cabinet door swings open.
Nope.
Nope. And I'm just like, oh man. I mean, and it's so funny because like other people are like, we would have fled the house. I mean, they would have fled the house when the tea happened. And I was just irritated at this point.
Well, and I think something that people like forget to mention too, because we're in the same boat. Like when we tell our stories, and people are listening to the podcast, why are you still there? There's a point where you can't afford to leave. The biggest thing for us, like as our issues started to progress, we like literally could not afford to leave this house. We're teachers, so
Yeah.
like that's part of it. And we're working at like one of the
Even
lowest,
for a night to go to a hotel would be hard to
it would have
do.
broken us.
Like,
We
yeah.
couldn't pay bills then. Because like we worked at the time the school we worked at was the lowest paid in our union by far, or the IU by far, we're the lowest paid. We couldn't afford to leave, so it's like
Yeah.
you
and
put
we
up
were in
with
the
it.
same boat because
Yeah.
we're in a fixer-upper.
You
Yeah.
have one of the original mansions to our area.
Yeah,
it's
it's an early one.
humongous.
Yeah.
So no, people don't. I think like when you're in this situation, it makes more sense to you. Like, oh yeah, you physically and like monetarily cannot leave.
Yeah.
And
it's
if you
true.
want to own the house, you're gonna make your stand. Like it has to be your house, which is what we all ended up doing for our own situations. But I think an important story for your house to tell, the night that I became a believer that your house had something like some kind of negative energy. The mimic was cute. It was just cute. The radio was cute. But this story predates me living there, I think, because we had Kyle over,
It was one of the first times we actually.
met him and
Yeah.
interacted.
It was
Yeah.
probably like we were just having the family
It was a
over
meet and greet
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing.
So this predates me even like us moving in. Was that night Kyle had gone out to your kitchen to get a Coke, and all the cabinets are open and all the doors are open.
Yeah, and Kyle comes back in and he's like, should your door be open?
And I think at that point you were just kind of like, no.
I know,
You're
even
just
then.
exhausted then
I
at that
know.
point. And so you're like, we should make sure that the cats are inside because you had only indoor cats at the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
And that's the door that's perpendicular to the basement
that was the
door.
one.
So same
Yep.
same room, same kitchen, right? Didn't change.
Yep.
And so you start counting up and you realize that all the cats are missing, right?
Yeah, they all got out.
And so somehow PJ and I got elected to go out in your creepy woods.
I think we just ran out.
Yeah, because I think I was still searching the house.
No,
for
we
the
put
cats.
coats on. We did
Yeah,
not
we
run
put
out.
coats
We put coats
on.
on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Because I think I was still looking in the
You
house.
were searching in the house
Yeah.
because that's important for our story later.
Yeah.
But like the woods beside your house aren't that big. You don't own
Right.
it's a sliver.
We
Really,
should tell the story about those woods after this.
we have to because the girl crying on the phone. But like to put in context, do you know the square footage of it? It's not that big.
The lot next to us.
Yeah,
with
that
the
little
It
woods?
can't be
of
more than
woods.
like 100 feet wide.
Yeah, it's
I
it's
know
Because
pretty
there's a
narrow.
ravine that goes down to the next.
Yeah.
I know our lot is a third of an acre.
So that one might be a half acre, but
Yeah.
even that's probably a
Being
lot for
nice.
what
Yeah,
it is.
I'd
Yeah.
say maybe it's
Yeah, so the
like
way the
another
property is
third.
lined up is it's their house and then a strip of woods
That leads back into
that,
a larger portion
that leads
of
back into a
woods.
larger piece of the woods, and then there's another house on the other side of the strip. And this strip is, like I said, like
It's on the
100
main
feet
street.
wide, maybe 200. But
Yeah.
it's narrow.
Yeah.
You can see straight through it. But once you get into it,
And I think that's the important thing. Is like we call it the woods because when you walk into it,
It's not just trees.
no, it feels huge.
And it encloses you somehow.
it feels like you're encompassed by it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
why I tell my students and now of course we're going out in the middle of the freaking night and it's cold.
windy too.
And-
as I
yeah, it
remember.
was like a
Yes.
January night.
I think it was
I think-
November. It doesn't matter.
November.
Oh, November.
All that matters is it was ice cold outside, middle of the night, and the house butts up against the main street in our town. So like it is a
Heavy traffic.
a heavy traffic road. So you'd think you're safe. We start on that end and we're gonna work our way backwards to the woods, the strip of woods. We walk in and it felt like for PJ and me like a door had closed behind us. Like the
Yeah.
trees just kind of enclosed us in. And he has a flashlight. We walk up to the ravine to look down your neighbor's lawn and he's like, checking, right?
Sweeping back and forth
Yeah.
with the light.
And to our right, which is physically impossible, we hear someone walking towards us through leaves. There are no leaves there because it's nothing.
It's a drop off
It's
into
a
the road.
drop-off, yeah. So we could hear where it's coming from, but I'm like, PJ, do you hear that? And do you remember what you said to
And
me?
I was just like, I heard it and I was ignoring it. I was like, just look for the cats.
Just look for the cats?
Look for the cats.
I got so sick of that. I'm like, you're freaking criminals. So anyway, he continues to sweep, and then to our left, we hear a little bell jingle, and I go, PJ, do you hear that? And he says,
Just look for the cats.
and at that point, I turn back at him and I'm really mad. But if you've seen the Blair Witch Project, I should point out that PJ has a beanie hat on, and he's wearing a corduroy jacket, and his back's to me, and he's sweeping his flashlight. So all I see is him doing this, rocking back and forth, which is like the last scene of Blair Witch Project. And I'm like, oh my god, we're gonna die in here. We gotta get out. We're gonna die.
Heck with the cats.
I'm like, we're done. But then we heard that bell. We look over, and it's Prancer crawling along the ground.
Like army crawling,
Yeah.
this cat.
This cat who was, we called him Stegosaurus because he was so.
He had a tiny little head and this big fat body. And
And long legs, which is why he was Prancer.
And once I go, Prancer, is that you? And once he realizes it's a human, he lunged up on me, attached his claws into my leather coat, and I could not remove him. And I remember looking at you and I go, we got one, we're good. Let's get out of here. Because
and at that point, we hear Laura saying like, "Hey guys, come on back in. We got them all." And so we
and I'm like, no, you don't, because I was cat attached to my leather jacket.
and we turn around and we see you through the window in the dining room, like
Talking to Kyle.
Yeah, talking to Kyle, and we're like, "Oh no!"
PJ, did you hear that? Look for the cats. Sorry.
Yeah.
Look for the cats. So we continue. I don't know what we did. We continued walking through the woods. I don't even know why we did that. To look for the cats, obviously. And we got up to where the English garden is, and Laura actually had come out at that point and had met us there.
Yeah.
And I was like, take your stupid cat. And I'm like ripping him off. He ruined my coat. Remember, I was so mad he ruined my coat that night, and I love that leather jacket. Just put that in there.
You did get into one at Gettysburg like a year later.
Listen,
It was a
What?
sacrifice for Prancer's mental health.
physical well-being
And
too.
that.
And so I was like, I'm done. I hate this house. I'm going back inside, which is hopefully
Who
a
knew that?
safe
What, a
route.
year later you were moved in?
I
A
know.
year and a half maybe?
All cats were found, though.
Yes, they were
Well,
found.
you and Laura decided to continue on, and you found a shed in the middle of your woods. Isn't that where you found another cat? Wasn't there like some kind of shed?
No, there are pipes that stick up
Pipes.
out of
That's
the
okay.
woods.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
It's totally
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's-
Normal.
I mean, and they're, but
For
it's
breathing.
weird. Like they're
For breathing, yeah.
But there's like a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's
It's
more like
not
a
funny.
a railing.
little
It wasn't
funny.
like I mean, it's metal, but it's in the shape of like an upside down U, and I don't know if it was.
Oh,
like,
it's a pipe.
I guess, but like what its purpose was, I
Yeah,
have no
metal pipe
idea.
that
As
comes
Ray
out,
said, for
turns.
breathing.
Yeah, and just goes right back into the ground.
Yeah.
Can't explain it.
For breathing.
Well, yeah.
So all cats were found.
Yes.
One leather coat was destroyed. Just gonna put that in there.
But I have
I
to
never
say
went in those woods again.
that you know what though, whatever it was in the house was also quite a prankster. There were many, countless almost times where things would go missing. I
That
mean,
happened at our house too.
And
I
this
hate
is another
that.
one where it's super easy to be like, oh, I misplaced that, you know? But
Yeah.
one time in particular, it was your wedding ring. You
It was my
remember this?
wedding ring, yeah.
Go ahead.
I knew where I left my wedding ring this time around. Absolutely knew. And
Yeah,
then
he
I
was so
looked-
sure. He's like, it was
There's
on
it's
the
actually
bedside
another
table.
Everything seems to like revolve around like the bedroom. I
Yeah,
don't, you know,
bedroom
like
was
it's
Someone
It's
try
really
asking
weird.
why you take your wedding band off.
Well,
Good
I
question.
can't remember, but it was definitely off. It was definitely on the nightstand. Went around to do stuff.
I just want to point out that Laura is glaring at you. So
Oh well,
awkward.
he's got to be past this because this isn't even. This is obviously
Oh yeah,
not the
he
original
lost
one.
it for good.
Yes,
like
and then
eons
the
ago.
replacements I have lost. So
We just buy
I've
him little
literally
cheap
gone
$5
through, like,
rings and
30 different rings at
because
this
he takes
point.
it off to sleep. He'll take it off to play piano. Like
I understand that.
I'm
though.
a
But in this
lefty,
particular
too.
case, he's like, I know I put it on the bedside table. I remember it. And it was, we woke up like that morning, it should have been right there. And so we're
I was
hunting
like,
for it.
Yeah, I was just so ticked off. I'm like, look, I don't know what you're up to. I just want my ring back. Will you please just give me my ring back?
Because we had searched for a few hours at this
Yes.
point. Like, we really were tearing the place apart.
And wouldn't you know,
We did
like,
find it.
within like 5 minutes of just my frustration manifesting as such, the ring was back on the nightstand.
Oh, but you know what? I'm actually remembering
Yeah.
a whole different story because there were a few times where his ring went missing. And this time that I'm remembering, I found it inside the refrigerator, inside a paper bag.
That really did happen.
Yeah.
So bizarre.
It's like that to me. Like I could understand. Like okay, you missed it on the nightstand, which was impossible because like we were searching for
Yeah.
hours and looked at that nightstand a dozen times. But yeah, I mean, it does not end up inside a paper bag inside the refrigerator. Like that does not happen by accident.
It just
That
takes me
does
back to
happen.
all the times that something in this house,
Took all your stuff.
Because we had a very similar story. I'm sure you remember where my mom had bought me that watch, that I used to wear all the time, and I was getting ready for work, and I always laid it on my nightstand because I'm organized. There's my glasses, my watch, and then my phone sat in this like little chair at night because there's a plug that would go into it. And so I put my glasses on, I go get ready, and my watch isn't where it's supposed to be. And so I'm like in the bathroom looking, I go back to my nightstand, it's still not there. And PJ says, what's wrong? And I said, my watch is missing. And he's really trying to help me find it. He's looked all over the nightstand and everywhere too. And then I go, I just really want my watch. Like it's so important to me. I just wish it would just show up. And then boom, it's back on the nightstand, right where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there's no way that we could have missed that because we were literally right there, looking. So it's one of many times that things had happened. And I remember asking one time in this house, because I never wanted to interact either, just because, they say it gets worse. But I was looking for a particular onesie for at the time Eli, who's a baby. And I said, I don't want to talk to you, but I need this onesie for this picture I'm taking, for these baby pictures. And then it just showed up laying on top of all the clothes in the basement. I'm just
Yeah.
like,
in a place you've already looked a dozen times.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
so I was just,
Yep.
it's just annoying, honestly.
It does become irritating.
Yeah.
Like after a while, you stop getting weirded out and you just get mad.
Knock it off, man.
Right? Like, if you're gonna do this,
You're
like,
living here free.
dust or do something useful,
Yes.
you know?
It made you tea, though. We never
Yeah.
got tea.
Only the one
Yes.
time. Only the one time. Then it was throwing
Yeah.
jars of tea around.
You
Yeah.
make the floor, dirt on the floor disappear.
Yeah.
That's what I would love for the ghost to do.
Yeah.
Can
Turn
you-
on the Roomba while you're
Yeah.
at it, you know? Like.
But I don't have one of those even now. Well, you should tell the backstory of your house then, or the
Yeah,
woods.
but we were talking about pipes in the ground for breathing and things like that, but no one understands
I don't
the
think
context.
they're really there for breathing.
Well, no, but
I
that's
think,
what we were joking
I
about.
think they are.
No.
I'm sorry.
Well, they very well might be, but it forms like, what do you call it? Like an upside down U, an arch. Oh,
Oh
I'm
no, it picks
sorry.
up right. You can hear 'em right away.
So you're just breathing your own air in. So I mean, if you have a specific purpose, I mean, yes, I'm sure that's
Maybe it's
effective.
a marker to know like where the
Maybe.
person is.
I don't know.
It's very, it's just weird. It's just weird. So our next door neighbor had lived in his home for 40, 50 years at that point. Grizzled old guy, Bill, and, actually it was the day we were moving in. Literally, the day we were moving in, boxes in our arms, carrying it, and he stops us, to introduce himself, and he says, well, I think you should know that the last 5 couples who've lived in this house have all divorced. And we're like, great! Welcome to the neighborhood!
No,
Thanks for the good news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually like
Super
when you have a
duper.
new neighbor, you like get them like a welcome basket.
Yeah.
No, that's
Can I
what
have my
we
fruit
got.
cake instead, or my
Yes.
Jello mold?
Now, we did know for certain that the couple that we bought the house from had divorced, that
Yep.
we had met them and we knew them. And interestingly, too, in our conversations as we were buying the house, one of the former owner, the husband, well, ex-husband, had very specifically said to us that he had tried to purchase the wooded lot on the opposite side because he wanted to put in a driveway there, but that the owner refused to sell.
And again, you can't build a house.
No,
You can
it's-
barely put a driveway like that he
It's so
wanted to do.
steep and the woods and it's narrow. I guess you could build a tiny home if you really, really wanted to.
That's true. The she shed.
Yeah. So we start looking into the history of the house, and our neighbor did tell us more. He told us the story of how back in the 70s, there was a professor at the local university who had a wife and 2 daughters. And
No, they had kids. I know
Yep.
that part. Okay.
2 daughters. And one night, in the middle of the night, Bill's wife wakes him up because she hears this strange buzzing sound. So Bill looks out the window, and our house, probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, it's a fairly large Victorian-style house.
Fairly large.
It's fairly large.
It's humongous, but continue.
yeah, I mean, it was close to 3,000 square feet, I guess.
That's just the main areas.
Yeah,
of
the
the
attic
house.
and the basement, which is the basement's the full length of the house.
And the
yeah.
attic spans the perimeter.
Yeah, so it's a big house, is what I'm getting at. But anyway, Bill said that in this middle of the night that every light from the attic to the basement was on, and this professor was vacuuming his car, and that was the buzzing sound that had woken up Bill's wife. And Bill, kind of went over the next day just to say hello or whatever, and it turns out that the professor's wife was gone to visit family. And Bill never saw her again. And Bill was told that they were divorced and whatever. And then later, the professor sold the home. But to this very day, he is still alive, and he still
What?
owns the wooded lot, the lot that he refused to sell to the guy that we bought the house from.
What about the 2 children?
As I understand it, one lives overseas.
Okay.
And one lives, I think, in Philadelphia now.
So they're alive.
They are alive. Yes. Because
I was concerned.
Yes. And I had actually, we had a pipe burst, and I was able to get in touch with one of the daughters. And so I was able to pick her brain about some things. Unfortunately, her mom did not come up, and I couldn't really
What?
bring it up in a nice way.
was wondering, how's your mother?
I did try to be like, do you have any
Is she
pictures
upright?
of the house, like when you were kids? And I don't know. It felt weird to ask, so
Allegedly,
I never did
her
ask.
mom lives maybe half an hour away from us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where?
You told me this.
Oh.
Near where you work.
Well, you may need to edit this out.
Oh.
You're ruining the mystique.
Sorry.
All right, so
Never mind.
the mom lived in Lewisburg, according to the daughter, and they shared custody.
What?
So yeah, so it apparently was fake, and
Interesting.
I know it's according to the daughter.
Well, according to the daughter.
Yeah, it's true. So
Who vacuums their car in the middle of the night?
exactly.
And why is there someone calling on your phone that's defunct, crying?
Well, there's definitely something that was happening in the house. I can't explain like what all that was. And so what else? So then we did, years later, we went to a, well, I shouldn't say years later, years ago, we went to a psychic. So, and I think we've told you about the psychic visit. But we went there, and she was really interesting. Do you want to talk about the psychic
No.
visit? I've been doing a lot of talking.
No, you do it.
All right. So.
I don't remember this story at all.
Oh, really?
I know you went to a psychic, but I don't remember anything about like what happened.
Yeah.
There's a funny. Well, you tell it.
Go
Val.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like the one funny thing that I remember is that she had predicted. She was like, "You are either going to adopt a little girl, or you've already adopted a little girl, and this little girl is gonna have like a kind of ethnic name." And I can just see her energy, and everybody's going to love her. And she's just, you should just see her, and like, her spirit is just so cute, is what she said. And we said to her, "It's like, well, we have a black pug named Lola. That's kind of like, sounds like a foreign name." And she's like, "No, I definitely see this as being more of a daughter energy and not like a pet energy." And I'm like, No, I think you got it right the first time. But no, go ahead.
Well,
yeah,
it's definitely
yeah.
our doctor.
That was the only funny thing I had to say.
Yeah. So we went to the psychic, and I will say, I mean, I won't go into everything that she talked about, but she definitely knew things about us that she would not have known. Like, she knew that I had, for example, an uncle who had passed away who was very religious, and my Uncle Rob had passed away not that long before.
I have to ask, did you make an appointment or anything, or was it a
Yeah, we
walk-in?
had-
Yeah, no, we
Yeah.
made an appointment. Mm-hmm.
See, do some research.
Mm-hmm.
They do.
You should meet with her. She's good.
No, they do research.
No, there's no way she could have known really about.
Okay.
It's certainly not
Yeah.
about like his background,
Okay.
but, and then there were other things that she was pretty specific on. But in terms of the house, she told us that there were 3 spirits. She said there was a man and his dog, and that there was a woman. And she said the woman was in a white nightgown and had either fallen or been pushed down a set of stairs. She couldn't tell us which set of stairs, whether it was basement or upstairs or whatever, but that was as she understood it. And she said that that by and large that these spirits liked us, and that we wouldn't have any major problems. But she suggested for anyone who needs to get rid of spirits that, again, you don't want to interact with it, and that what you should do is, even when you're not at home, play things like Disney movies or pop music, because it creates an atmosphere that ghosts don't want to be in. And so we would do that. I mean, honestly, like, who wants to listen to Britney Spears all day,
Right here.
So we did that, and also Ray went.
To exorcise the demon.
So you put on some Vanilla Ice.
There you
Ice
go.
Baby. There we go.
Spice Girls.
Hey, that is a treasure.
I'm sorry.
And
Too far, right?
Too far.
And then also, she gave us instructions to sage the house, which Ray did. And also, we had our priest come over and do a house blessing. So we kind of did lots of things all at one time. And since that time, which was quite a few years ago, we haven't had any noticeable activity.
Which is
So,
good.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we had similar situations here, and it was you who had suggested the sage stick for
Yeah.
us
Mhm.
too.
It was your sage stick. We borrowed it.
Yeah, that's true. Multiple use.
Well, that was an interesting situation too, because ours was not as easy to take care of because when we talk about our story, ours is definitely demonic. Unfortunately. But we have so many stories about this house that I just felt like your stories would be great as like a little connection, like a little mini series, because you only do so much D&D. I mean, D&D is awesome, but I think it's cool to get the background of like us and
Yeah.
stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
So something that's different about me compared to you three, I think, is that after the events that we've gone through, I'm drawn to horror movies like a moth to flame because I want vindication of someone else who gets that feeling of being physically alone in the house, but you're not alone in the house and you know that. And so I'm waiting for a movie that really captures it. And I'm just actively searching for something. And like the first 20 minutes of Paranormal Activity gets it pretty nicely. Where like the spookiest thing that happens is the sound of keys falling to the floor in the middle of the night. And it's like, whoa, no. But like that's the reality of it. And then it goes into Hollywood
Well, 'cause when
nonsense
you tell your
after that.
stories, it's like you tell all of these stories, of all these major events that happened, and then you have kids who say, "Well, why are you living there?" Dude, it was over a series of years. You'd have like your watch go missing, then like you're good for a month or two, then your shoes go missing, and like, oh, you could have misplaced it. It becomes coincidental, and you can while it away. Except for the teeth thing, I don't know how you. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I never felt like unsafe in the house. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like my privacy was a little bit compromised. I mean, if you're climbing into bed with me,
Yes.
that's
or
a
taking
little.
a shower.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Maybe it was more
but
about comforting you while
I don't
was
know
away.
about that.
We felt unsafe at the end, but we never, for most of the time, you more so. But
Yeah. See, you can't.
I
Tell,
never felt alone though. That's the big
Yeah.
thing for me is I never felt alone.
And he mentioned like movies that like you want to watch horror movies because you want that vindication. I can't watch Insidious. That first like section where the mom's playing the piano and there's that sound over the baby monitor.
Yeah.
Like I physically have PTSD because of what happened when I was here with Sophie alone with Bandit, our dog at the time, and the sounds over the monitor. Like it takes me back to that moment. Like I never really felt safe after that, especially. I would
Straight up one of the coolest horror movies ever though.
shut up. No,
Seriously.
I wouldn't know. But then, like, of course, the basement. When we realized I realized it was demonic and not just a ghost. Because the shadow figure. And I think, again, like when you're stuck in that situation where you can't afford to go anywhere else, you make do. And at the time, it was that loop kind of idea where it was bad. It would get bad about what, like
Every 6 months.
September-ish. But it was like
It was always
worst.
around October. Yeah, like September leading into October is when I got the worst.
Yeah, and like by like mid-November, it was over. It was like we knew that we could get through that. Would be okay.
Cyclical.
Because we have a series of videos, series. It's just 2 videos, but they were a year and 5 days apart.
Yeah.
It was October 25th and October 29th or something like that of 2 sequential years.
Things that had happened.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
always end of October when it happened.
Because like little things would happen, like my Facebook memories pop up and it says like, "Oh, here's a fun time the ghost again took a pair of flip flops from Rose Sophie or whatever." Like there were things that happened that were like mimicry
Yeah.
or whatever.
Or
But
just annoying.
so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I knew that if we could get to like mid-November, if we could just make it to then, it was fine. Like that's
Yeah.
my brain was like after once Christmas season comes, we're good to go, And so I kind of just let it. And the kids weren't being hurt until we realized that something was going on, and that's like when I'm like, nope, call the priest, we're done.
Yeah.
Any more stories from your house though?
None that I
I
can.
think we hit all the big ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's and then there were there were a lot of them that just sort of repeated, you know,
Mhm.
like the missing things, the mimics, the things moving across rooms, the lights flickering.
The mimic situation happened like a few times.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
so
a
funny
lot.
for me to talk about this because, like I said before, I consider myself. Well, no, I don't know if I said this before, but it's hard for me to admit that this happened.
For
I
sure,
feel like
yeah.
I hear me talking sometimes, and I'm like,
Well, because then
I
you're
feel like I
kind
sound
of
like a crazy
admitting-
person.
Yeah, exactly. You're admitting like that either you're insane or something unexplainable is happening,
Right,
and
right.
Right.
neither is good.
So there's like that dissonance like in my head, like what I witnessed and what I believe is possible, or you
Yeah.
know, and when I have no explanation, then I feel like I don't know, almost like I've gone crazy or something.
Mhm.
Well, PJ mentioned earlier, like he's waiting for a movie that will showcase like that true feeling of being alone. I have to say there is one that I love watching that because I love scary stories. Even with all this going on, I've always loved horror and fantasy. But the Bathsheba story,
The Conjuring.
the original Conjuring, you know, like when all those kids are there and like they're playing the
I don't think they.
game.
I've never seen it.
Oh,
Okay.
oh
So-
my gosh, we need to see that with Ray.
With Ray, we showed
Ray's
it.
one
For those
jump
that don't know,
scares,
yeah, I'm
All right. So
I jump
preface
at
for anyone who
everything.
hasn't seen The Conjuring, like the other two at this table here, where most horror movies, like when things happen, there's a period to breathe afterwards, and then things ramp up again, and then a period to breathe again. Once things start happening, it just increases and increases and increases, and it just keeps going. Like,
It's a true example of rising action. Like it
yeah,
just keeps
and
building up that.
yeah,
hill.
there's no time to breathe once it starts. It's just crazy.
And that's how I felt like with your house and then
Mhm.
moving here, because there's a time when the kids are playing a game where like I've never played this game in my life, so watching these kids play it, like I don't
remember this.
it's in the commercials, but like, you know, that you blindfold them or whatever, and you can only find them by a series of claps, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
like Marco Polo, but you're clapping.
Yeah. So I'm explaining it terribly, but again, I've never played
You're
it.
thinking of the orphanage.
No. I'm actually thinking of something that happened in your house.
Oh,
okay.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, in any case, there's a part where, like, they're at this, like, landing to what is the basement, and there's a... And that is how I felt in your house of the Mimic.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt in this house. Just that, like, that feeling of waiting, that expectation, but, like,
Waiting
not a
for something
positive.
to pop out. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just waiting for it. Because I knew, like, as soon as September 1st, once back to school would happen, that things were going to ramp up. And, like, so I was waiting for that kind of thing to happen.
Yeah, no, and I think that you're right too. Like even in our house, I think there was definitely a desire for whatever it was to be noticed. And so when we would ignore it, like there was one time where I was down in the basement doing laundry, and you know, I started up, I turn around, I walk away, everything shuts off, and I turn around, and I reset the plug, you know, like the
Circuit breaker.
the socket, on the electrical plug, and everything starts up again. I turn around, shuts off again. Same thing happens a third time, and then I just am like, fine, I know you're here. Can I please just do my laundry? And then I press the button and start it up, no problem. You know, I mean, again, is that coincidental? Could be, could absolutely be.
Mhm.
But you know, it's like, but you almost have that feeling of like, once I was recognized, like, I know you're here, that's like what it wanted was this attention. And maybe because we did the staging and we're like, just go. We're going to put on like Christina Aguilera for you.
You're
not
gonna
gonna
be a
like it.
genie in a bottle, sweetheart.
Yeah, you know, whatever. That maybe that's what finally clued it in to be like, oh, maybe they actually don't want me here. So, no, but the thing I was thinking of was when you had oh gosh, it wasn't like the Wii, but it recognized like
The Kinect.
the Connect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's your story. I
Yeah.
won't take it. But I was here when it happened. So.
Oh, were you?
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah.
happened a couple times. The
yeah.
first
Mhm.
time it happened, the game Destiny came out. The creators of Halo was their first game that wasn't Halo in 20-some years, and everyone is fighting for codes to like play the game early. And so on my phone, no, laptop, because phones, like, smartphones weren't a thing at that point, or not common. So I'm on my laptop, like on Reddit, searching for codes because people are just giving them away, and all of a sudden, like, my Xbox turns on and starts like moving through the menus, and because when the Kinect like would sense a hand, like a circle would appear where your hand was, kind of like a mouse cursor, and I could see it like just swiping, across all the menus, and then like it would hold on something to open up a window, and then it would close out of that and open up a different app, and then close out of that, and I'm just watching all this happen, like not knowing what to do, and so I'd turn that off and.
I'd be like, hey, order me a pizza.
What was your story though? What did?
Eli was playing
it was
a
the
game.
Connectimals
Yeah.
game, right?
Yes, and so Eli was playing a game, but there were 2 figures playing.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
there were 2 of them.
It was the Connectimals.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
friend was playing a game at his house once, and it's a rowboat game, and he's rowing down the river, and all of a sudden, like, there's someone sitting in the back of his boat with him, and he's like, oh my god, like, do I turn around and see what's behind me? And
Goes to the
and
machine.
he's just like rowing, like ignoring that there's someone else in the boat with him, and then he turns around and it's his dog.
That happened here too, because they had the same River Rapids game.
Yeah.
And it was a cat. I think it was Toby or something was in the boat.
Yep.
But no, the Connectimal thing. It was
Yeah.
right because we were sitting. It couldn't have been us because we were not even like in the. Screen.
Oh yeah, no, we were out of because we were on the couch. We were
Yeah.
talking, and I remember Eli was like doing his little thing over, in front of the TV, and then you pointed out, and like, what is that? And I'm like, yeah, why are there 2? And they weren't like, it wasn't like a shadow. They were doing different things.
Yep. It was enjoying it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always
Stuff.
think of that story. I never think of your Destiny story. I think of that
Yeah.
one. But
I must have not been there for that one.
Well, because you'd already told me that it had been taken, it's
Mm-hmm.
been taken control. So I was like, oh, it's fine. This is just what happens at our house. Ignore it. It'll go away. Anyway, more tea, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep.
you start ignoring it because
mean-
it's just easier.
Well, people have like started using Kinects to see like for ghost hunting,
Oh.
because what a Kinect is it shoots out thousands of lasers, and it tracks like the distance of things to the laser. So if you push your hand forward towards the Kinect, it knows that that laser just got that much shorter, and so you tie that to night vision, and you can see the lasers through the night vision camera. So if something goes through it, you can see the lasers bend when something goes through it.
I do not
Oh.
want to see that. I don't want to see haunted mouse.
They did it in one of the paranormal
Say, well, yeah,
activities too.
yeah.
I was going to
Interesting.
mention that, but never mind. It's interesting. Like, I have no interest in seeing real ghost stuff. I like watching like the reenactment stuff on TV. I like watching scary movies. But ever since being in this house, I'm kind of like, whatever you say, I believe you. I'm not even gonna question it. I believe, but I want to talk about it. Like
No, I need it. I need to see more.
that vindication.
Mhm.
No, thank you. I want, knock on wood, everything to stay the same. It's very nice. Well, I can't wait to tell our stories because, like,
Yeah.
just the well alone and just.
Yeah.
And
Well, I was thinking about this as we're talking. The basement is where a lot of that stuff happened because that's where the well is, and that's where I was shut down the basement stairs, and that's
Mhm.
where I saw that shadow figure. I think that's also why I was never so like gung ho. Let's get the basement fixed up because I have done everything else in this house. We've gotten every room done. I put all that flooring upstairs. I have done so much. Hopefully, it looks different too. It looks nice.
Very much.
A lot
yes.
of work to this house because you lived here as a kid. We bought the house from my in-laws a long time ago. Attic is all done. But I never wanted to do the basement. Now, part of it was there's a lot of crap down there, but I think I just couldn't go down there.
Yeah.
After that shadow figure happened, I didn't do laundry. I was all people, you can go down to that basement. I'm not going down
Yep.
there, It's only now that, like, I don't have a fear of going down there to do laundry. And we just painted it this summer. We've lived here for over a decade.
Yeah.
And the house is, we had it exercised before our youngest was born. So, like, that just shows that, like, it took me that long to get
yeah,
down
we've
there.
been here since '09.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
The fear.
Oh, I get it. I still don't go down to my basement.
Yeah. We have zombie spiders, so I don't
true.
have that.
Not anymore. They are
Fun
gone.
fact: there is an HBO series based on a video game coming out about that fungus taking over humans.
Oh.
Written by the guy who wrote Chernobyl.
That's literally a little too close to home.
Yeah, pretty literally. I don't know if every single spider is gone. I hope so. Haven't been down there in a while.
Check all the cracks.
Yeah. Yeah. Need you to come paint our
Funny.
basement next.
You
There
have
you
dirt
go.
floor, so joke's on you. Lay some
They're
concrete.
not all dirt though.
There's one area that has been concreted.
It's the concrete is where your washer
Washer
dryer
and dryer.
was. That was
Yeah.
it. The rest of it
Little
was dirt.
platform, yeah.
No, I think it's a little different because when we got the sump pump in, I think they concreted at least the initial. We'll have to take a look
yeah,
again.
I'm not sure.
I'm good. I don't
But
need
that
to go
means
down
going
there.
back down there.
Yeah,
you know.
let's avoid that.
So what did they think
It's
when
not
they saw a door it
exactly
says
play.
keep door shut? Like what did they think?
The basement dudes, it did not phase them whatsoever.
They must be used to
They
scary
at least
basements.
didn't say anything.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like the basements that need the sump pump, and they're probably
Yeah.
like the quirky ones, the quirky basements. I don't know.
As long as I didn't hear
not a
giggling and
builder.
little feet pattering
Not
around.
that they ever mentioned. Yeah.
Right. Well,
This was fun.
yes, it was. I know Laura mentioned way back before we bought this equipment, like playing a game and then talking about it afterwards and things like that. And, doing so. I would like to have you guys on more often and things like that. And
Yeah, you're the board game person.
Okay.
yeah, because my thing is like so many board game podcasts talk about like they go through all the rules and like how it plays and everything, and that, like they teach how to play it and then like talk about it. Where I'm more interested in like the stories we get out of them. Like the first time we played Betrayal House on the Hill, Ray walked into a room and got attacked by a ventriloquist puppet and died. And so,
Oh, the memories.
so,
of
like,
Chucky
that's
Speaking.
what-
horror.
so that's what I
My
wanted to be
favorite
about.
board game, ironically.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to be about. Not so much like this is how you play and things like that. Like it's more about just like the weird stories that you make out of them.
Yeah.
And the Sherlock Holmes when your wife is the murderer. No, it wasn't Sherlock.
Frankenstein. You found Frankenstein's
No.
journal.
That game where you and Jeff played against me and
Oh, Whitehall Mystery.
yes,
Yeah.
I murdered lots of people.
Yeah, they haven't played that one yet. It's so
No,
good.
I have not.
It's so good.
I did a good job being a murderer.
I'm not surprised.
I know it's
You're very organized.
Thank you.
And
They
focused.
couldn't catch me.
So thank you for
That sounds like
having
fun.
us.
Yes, thank you so much.
We should have them on when we tell our ghost stories of our house.
Oh, we can do that.
We can have like
Yeah.
a reaction. They can ask questions.
We can have an audience.
Yeah, we could
Exactly.
do that. Be like a
It's
part
boring
two.
if I just talk
A
to
live
you.
audience, that is.
Part two.
All right. Well, until next time, thank you.
Thank you.